Councilmember Hopper, Councilmember Jaxi,
Here.
Councilmember Bertolino,
Here.
Councilmember Dodwell,
Here.
Councilmember Ottenberg,
Here.
Councilmember Edens,
Here.
Councilmember Bros,
Here.
Councilmember Garitano,
Here.
Councilmember Flasher,
Here.
Councilmember Rambo,
Here.
Councilmember McCutcheon,
Here.
Councilmember Farmer,
Here.
Councilmember Nyan, Councilmember Bartoni,
Here.
Councilmember Clark.
Here.
Okay, welcome again. Good to see all of you. Under information, we have 6 items according to my count. Or is there anything under information that any member of the council would like to discuss before we move into action items? Seeing none, all right. We're going to go into action items. The first is Public Works, Rick Brown. Where is Rick? So Rick, do you want to, I think everyone knows the background of this. This was based on action from the prior council, and my understanding is from the documentation we've been provided. So this was postponed from our last meeting to determine whether the Monarch Fire Protection District had in fact decided to get a traffic study as the city had requested. My understanding is from the documentation that's been provided that is no, they have not, unfortunately. So Rick, do you have anything to add to that before we get into a decision on your recommendation for the party and the cost to do this?
Mr. Mayor, I do not. I don't know if Administrator Cross has anything to add relative to the issue of payment, but I'm not aware of any commitment on the part of Monarch Fire. The proposal is the same as was presented at the last meeting. It is intended to address the concerns that were stated by the council and the mayor relative to the issue of the new location of the fire station relative to the existing location.
Okay, so does anyone, City Administrator Cross, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At our last council meeting, Councilmember Bertolino had advised us that through a reliable source, as he characterized it, had indicated that perhaps the Monarch Fire Protection District was seeking and perhaps it had even entered into an agreement for a traffic study there at the firehouse. So I reached out to, actually we went through our attorneys just to kind of keep it at that level. So John Young was on vacation last week, but one of his partners reached out to Matt, the attorney representing the Fire Protection District, and he checked with the folks on the board. What he came back and ultimately reported to us was that they have a proposal for a traffic study. However, they have not actually officially entered into an agreement as we speak right now. But it appears that they are doing something to pursue that anyway. They just have not pulled the trigger as of right now.
Well, that puts the city in a quandary, as well as its residents having to pay for this. So, I mean, it's their firehouse, I guess, to the extent that they would want to move forward, we would likely hear on that sooner rather than later. And I would sure hate for us, even though the council's decided to move forward with this, I would hate for us to, our residents have to pay for this if they're going to do it. So did you get any indication as to when they might be looking at that proposal, or it seemed like they kind of half in, half out?
At this point, no, they did not see in terms of a time frame. They just simply said that they have the proposal, and this is through the attorney, that they had not entered into agreement at this point. Now we can continue using the avenues that we're using, which is when now that John's back, it would be John through to Matt, or if the council wants perhaps me to go directly to Richard Gans or somebody else directly on the board to see if we can get a more definitive answer, I'm happy to do so.
So, I mean, the planning, well, the council asked for this many moons ago. And I mean, I think that the city's going to be at a disadvantage, frankly, if it doesn't move forward with this. But I guess if the council decides to move forward with this evening, and the fire district then later decides it's going to do a traffic study after our residents' taxpayer dollars have been expended for it, it would be very unfortunate. But I don't know that we have much choice. City Attorney Young.
Well, the indication in the email that we received from the attorney for the fire protection district was that they recently received the proposal. So I don't know if it, so clearly, I don't know what their process is internally for RFQs for engineering services. While it does seem like it's been a while, I'm not sure what if their process requires a lot of steps, but they have recently received it. And at this point, I have no reason to believe that they would not expeditiously move on it, having received it and waiting on the next regular meeting of the Board of Directors of the Fire Protection District.
Yeah.
But we can confirm that.
Well, I mean, the caveat to that is the city requested this long ago, and we found out about it from, frankly, one of our own, Councilmember Bertolino. The fire district never made us aware of it. I'm a little perplexed as to why the fire district wouldn't make us aware of it, given that they knew that this has been a requirement for some time. But anyway, it's up for the council's determination as to what it would like to do tonight, but it seems rather odd, the chronology that we're seeing here. Councilor McCutcheon.
City Attorney Young, did they give you any kind of time frame that their process takes? If it's, when's the next meeting of the Board of Directors, do you know?
No, I do not.
Councilmember Farmer.
So it's been a while here and I was in the throes of COVID when we were dealing with this last time. So just as a little bit of a refresher, it seems to me that the fire department has selected a site that perhaps many of us were not particularly enthusiastic about. And we asked them to do this traffic study to see if that would be a good fit. They opted not to do it. Now they might do it. We have the option to do it. But I guess my question is, if we do this and the traffic study comes back and it gives us some level of results that we aren't real thrilled with, what is going to happen other than they're going to build a firehouse where we don't want it in the first place?
So that raises a couple of issues. I guess, first of all, I would be, and I'm just speaking personally, putting the legal issues aside, which we may want to go into executive session to discuss. I would be, I guess, shocked that a district of any type would want to proceed if experts in the field have said this presents safety issues and so forth. Obviously, that would be their decision to make. But from a perspective relative to the residents of not only Wildwood, but Chesterfield and everyone else who travels that road, if I were on that board, I would certainly think twice about it if that study came back to reflect that. But in regard to legal issues, City Attorney Young, is that something that, because that's the other segment of this,
Right.
Is that something that you would want to talk with the council about in executive session?
If there's a desire to discussion, an executive session would be appropriate.
I guess my concern is my assumption based on how we've kind of gone through this is if we get a traffic study that comes back with not the world's greatest results and there are concerns, I would assume that the fire district would initiate a secondary traffic study that would probably result in hopefully the same answers, but more than likely not. And so then we're just going to be sitting here with our own sets of separate traffic studies that offset one another.
Well, it could do that, but I think that puts and this is up for the public to decide, and particularly Wildwood residents, I think it puts the fire district, frankly, in a very bad light, because they've had the opportunity to decide who does the traffic study that the city has requested for many weeks and have taken a pass on that. And after we spend taxpayer money, if they were to do that, I as a taxpayer, I wouldn't like that.
Right.
Councilmember Dodwell.
I guess I have a question as to why we would do a traffic study now when we're going to have a roundabout in the next year or two at the intersection of 109 and Wild Horse, or at least the next 3 years. Wouldn't that allow for better traffic flow anyway? And how can we do an appropriate fact finding if the road is going to change in the future?
That's a great question. Rick Brown may want to expand on this. I think my understanding is that the traffic study would contemplate that change. And in fact, we've reached out to the MoDOT lead engineer, Ryan Piercy, to invite him to be part of the study that the city would do for that and other reasons. But Rick, do you have any, is that accurate? And do you want to add anything to that answer?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'd say that's accurate. The study will consider both the existing condition, and then it'll also consider the roundabout once that improvement is in place.
Joe Benich.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor and members of City Council, I'm sure you're aware that the Monarch Fire Protection District has submitted an application to the Board of Adjustment, which will be heard this Thursday night, regarding the placement of the building, the monument sign, and certain parking spaces. If the board is inclined to consider that favorably, they are authorized to establish certain conditions associated with such an authorization. And certainly, until the board acts, I would ask the city council to not necessarily proceed forward with the traffic study at this time. Thank you.
So when would you suggest that council proceed with the traffic study?
I would ask for an additional 2 weeks to allow the Board of Adjustment to consider the variance request, and then have the board also potentially consider conditions if their recommendation is favorable.
City Attorney Young, that an agreeable approach?
I think that's an agreeable approach, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. So that would require a motion to postpone this for 2 weeks then?
Yes.
Thank you. Councilmember Dodwell,
I'll make that motion, and you have a second on the other side.
and a second by Councilmember Flasher. And in the meantime, if the council is agreeable with this as a condition of that postponement, not only for the Board of Adjustment, but if John could maybe work with Steve Cross to get more definitiveness, i.e. a commitment firmly from Monarch as to what it's going to do and not going to do, so that we can make a decision in the best interest of our residents with this. Is there any objection to that? Okay. So the motion to postpone on those bases is on the floor. Any further discussion on the motion for 2 weeks? Motion to postpone. Seeing none, all in favor of the motion to postpone, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, motion carries. It'll be on the agenda 2 weeks from now. Next, Planning and Parks Hard Court System. Joe.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor and members of City Council, back at the beginning of 2021, the Planning and Parks Committee considered several smaller park and trail projects, one of which was potentially developing a hard court play area in one of the city's parks. That particular list was submitted to City Council at the end of February and received and filed. No action was necessarily taken on any of those 7 projects, but in May, the Administration and Public Works Committee held a discussion regarding the hard court play surface area. And ultimately, they made a motion which was seconded and approved, advocating for a hard court play area to be considered in one of the city's parks. That recommendation was forwarded to the Planning and Parks Committee and taken up at its June meeting. At the June meeting, the Planning and Parks Committee basically decided that they would like to proceed forward with a hard court play area in Community Park on its southern end near State Route 100 and would like the authorization from the city council to proceed forward at that location in that general vicinity of the 66-acre tract of land, and also to be authorized to proceed forward with creating a request for qualifications to have a consulting firm design, engineer, and provide bid specifications for the same. It is the intent of the Planning and Parks Committee to consider those requests for qualifications and make a recommendation to City Council. And this will also be an item at this year's mid-year budget adjustment discussions, because again, money was not set aside at the start of the fiscal year for such. But tonight, the committee is hopeful that the City Council will support Community Park at its location in the southern end near State Route 100 and allow it to proceed forward with soliciting expertise to develop a plan for such. Mr. Mayor, the chair, Madam Chair McCutcheon, and I are available for any comments or questions regarding the committee's action. Thank you.
Joe, if I could, what is the projected cost? Do we know?
We like to think it's going to be less than $100,000.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Fleischer. I'm sorry, Joe. Joe, go ahead. I'm sorry, I cut you off.
And my apology, we have a new chair, Chair Bartoni, and I apologize to both Ms. McCutcheon and him. Thank you.
That's okay. Thank you. Councilor Fleischer.
I'd like to make the motion to proceed forward with
Obtaining
community
bids.
park. Yeah, getting the information that we need for that in community park.
Joe, you're wanting the motion to be to obtain bids. Is that correct?
To proceed forward with the design and engineering so we can at least bring back a cost estimate or, pardon me, a cost proposal for such. Thank you.
Okay. Will be the motion. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Nyan. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing no discussion, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Moving next, the sales trailer. Joe.
Again, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're
Mr.
welcome.
Mayor and members of City Council, as you know, the sales trailer for the Prime Place has been a topic of discussion for the past several meetings. The department has been working with the development entity to try to address the concerns of City Council. At this point, the development entity would like to retain the trailer at that location, but has agreed to do a number of steps to improve its appearance so as it is more aesthetically pleasing than not. Those steps are identified on page 2 of the department's memorandum. I do want to note that in discussions with both of the individuals that form the development entity, a lot of work is underway at this time. Specifically, last week, at the end of the week, the department received a legal document for the cross parking and cross access easements that are required between the Prime Place and the B&B Theater site. So there has been some money spent on attorneys to have those agreements developed. Also, the site development plan, I've been in conversations with Stock and Associates, the engineer of record, and they are preparing those for submittal to the Planning and Zoning Commission. And I have provided the schedule to the them for the Architectural Review Board, because they have been before the board previously, but they need to finalize those drawings reflecting the comments of the board. So I guess what I'm saying is they are proceeding forward as if development is going to occur before the end of the year. The department believes the steps that are set forth for the Prime Place trailer will improve its appearance and then address certainly or hopefully those concerns that have been expressed by City Council. Tonight, the department is seeking agreement on those steps so as they can be provided to the development entity and implemented immediately. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. So in essence, your proposed solution is that it remains in place with some upkeep and aesthetic alteration. Is that a
Yes,
fair
sir.
statement?
You said it much faster and more succinct than I, so thank you.
Councilmember Farmer,
So
is your microphone on?
it is,
Okay.
I I really, really would like for this project to happen and to work. I know that the city and Joe, you guys have been putting some effort into this. I was over there today. I'm not sure how many more boxwoods we can put in front of that trailer to make it look any better. I don't know that it would be possible. I also have some just general concerns. You know, when I look at that location, they're talking about maybe 6 months to break ground. I wasn't the developer, but I've been a party to developments like this. I'm not even sure what they're building. I mean, I think it is still a retirement type facility for seniors is, I believe, the last thing that we landed on. But even in this, it just says a specific demographic without listing the demographic that they are building the project for. So I'm really happy that they're pushing paper and stuff around, but until they actually have a plan and start putting something in the ground, I don't know why you need an unoccupied sales trailer. It looks awful. It's not going to look any better with blacktop and 17 more boxwood bushes. So I appreciate that they're working hard to get this done. I really hope that they can, because I think getting people into town center to live is awesome, and it will help us get more money into our businesses, which is what we want. But I am legitimately concerned that if we are 6 months out, I'm looking at their website. This is now 2 weeks since we did this before. Not a single thing has been updated. Literally nothing. If I was a sales entity trying to get leasing or selling of apartments or whatever they're doing in the next 12 to 24 months, I would have a list of reservations happening right now. So I appreciate the effort, but I'm just not in favor of having this gross trailer sitting for another 6 months, where they're asking for, if I'm reading this right, another 12 to 24 months to figure out what they're doing over there. They can move the trailer if they need to have someone on site, which I would very much encourage. I am quite certain that there are places within town center like Brightleaf Views that they can utilize for that purpose. I get that we want to try to help these guys out, but you know, I have seen plenty of buildings come up during COVID. I'm pretty numb to them saying COVID was a problem. So my vote for me is they got to get rid of this thing, and they got to get this thing put together in the right way before I'm going to be enthused to help out anymore on it. That's what I got.
Councilmember McCutcheon.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with Councilmember Farmer, but I do have a question. So Joe, was there any discussion as to why they won't use a storefront or an office location that's unoccupied in town center versus a trailer?
Ms. McCutcheon, I believe it's their intent to not only use that facility for sales purposes, but also as their construction headquarters. So the construction or the project manager would also occupy that space and direct daily activities at the site. And Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Sure, go ahead.
Mr. Farmer, I think there's a underlying time frame here that's going to drive this project success or not. In the city's grading code, Mr. Brown cannot issue a grading permit, a new grading permit after November 1st and until March 1st of the following year. That's the winter season, and we've had issues with issuing grading permits during that period of time, and it's not been very positive. So quite frankly, the development entity now knows that they have just till the end of October to pull that grading permit. And if they don't, they're basically out past the end of this year and certainly almost into spring of 2022. That is something they didn't realize. And that, I think, is what's prompting a lot of the activity right now. So I'm thinking it's not a 6-month time frame. I actually think it's going to be around 4 months. And if the site development plan is authorized by the Planning and Zoning Commission, that acts as the preliminary plat, which would allow Mr. Brown, the Department of Public Works, to issue a preliminary grading permit, and development would actually begin.
Councilmember Brost.
Yeah, I guess I've driven by the trailer a number of times, and I can't say I've noticed it as much as the past few weeks after it's been a discussion here, but I don't really see it as a detriment or an issue for Wildwood. I do agree with the one thing Joe mentioned is that it will be of significant benefit to downtown Wildwood and to the businesses. And I think we need to do what we can to support an improvement of the downtown area. And I do think this development, which I think I understand the development, I think will be a tremendous benefit. And, you know, sometimes you got to break an egg before you make an omelet. And I think right now we're at that point where they're trying to move forward with something I think will be very beneficial for Wildwood. And I think we all need to relax and support them. And that's my position. So I thank you.
Councilmember Bartoni.
I'm all in full support of anybody who wants to build in our town center area. I'm just kind of curious if this project's ever going to happen. Just so I know, and if this was explained earlier, I apologize for making somebody repeat this, but how did we get to the point where the trailer is there? Like they don't have grading permits. They don't have the permits necessary yet. So how does the trailer get there without that part?
Joe, before you answer, Joe, do we still have Councilmember Garitano with us? I don't see. She's still.
Yes, I am
Okay.
here.
Okay, I just didn't see you, Joe, on the screen. I want to make sure we didn't lose you there. So thank you. Go ahead, Joe Bench.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Bartoni, there is provisions in our miscellaneous regulations of the zoning ordinance that allow a sales trailer to be placed on site well in advance of any development activity occurring on the same. There are also in those same miscellaneous regulations provisions to remove it if nothing does happen on the site. Again, it was a decision maybe the department shouldn't have made, but given that we haven't had a new commercial building constructed in town center since 2008, and that we haven't had success with, let's say, higher density residential housing in downtown district, the feeling is that if we could give some leniency, at least on the part of the department, we should. I'll accept full responsibility for that. But at the end of the day, I think we are on the cusp of it either moving forward or not. And it is still orientated toward a senior population. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm not looking to put blame on anybody. I'm just kind of curious how we got to this, and maybe just us as a group need to keep that in our minds the next time sort of a development like this does happen. Thanks.
City Administrator Cross, did you want to add something to that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Not to that specific point, but I thought perhaps it might be a point to throw out to the council, and it may enter into your decision. It may not enter into your decision, but I would like to remind you, because I know that Mr. Vundi brought this up in a prior conversation with the council, that one of the development team controls that field that is to the east of the B&B Theater. That field we are going to be using for the next three events, the July event, which occurs this Friday, the August event, and then most importantly, the Celebrate Wildwood event in September. So one of the members of that development team controls that piece of property. So just kind of wanted to throw that out, and it may or may not enter into your decision.
Councilor Bertolino.
Yeah, question and a comment. Joe, are you asking for the council to pass a resolution tonight or pass a saying that we accept the 6 months? Is that what the agreement is for?
With the mayor's permission, yes, Mr. Bertolino, I would like a motion second and some type of voice vote or whatever is appropriate, saying that you have authorized it to be retained at least through the end of this year, and that all of those conditions must be met.
I'd like to make that motion. And if we could get a second, I'd like to come back for a comment, if I could, Mr. Mayor.
We'll get a second, and you can do that. Yeah, is there a second to made by Councilmember? Sorry, Ottenberg. Thank you. The side of the table over here is confusing me. Go ahead. My apology, Councilmember. Otten.
Thank you. With all respect to Joe and others, I agree with Larry. I think that the trailer does not bother me at all. And in fact, I always see it as just a little bit of ray of hope that something's going to happen in town center. It's been 25, 26 years since we've had that empty field out there. And we now have an opportunity to almost push this one over the goal line. I hate to do anything that's going to retard that. So I think another 6 months is reasonable in this case.
So the motion, just for clarification, is to move forward as recommended in the July 12, 2021 letter from Joe Bennett to the council, correct? Okay. Councilmember Dodwell on the motion.
It may be on the motion because I want to add something to it.
Okay, what is that?
I want to add that they will report back to Joe Vunich on the current status of their activities every 2 weeks so that he can report back to council at each of our meetings going forward, since we're giving them this extension
Up through and including the 6-month period.
up through and including the 6-month period, so that
Okay.
we know what's going on.
So given that I'm not anticipating much rejection to that or objection to that, is there, so the motion's been made, and once made, as you know, it's in the possession of the full council and can only be amended or withdrawn by consent. And so would there be any objection, first of all, starting with the maker and second the motion, to that being a proviso of the motion? Would that be
No.
okay? That'd be okay. Councilor Ottenberg?
Oh, you're-
All right. Is there any objection editorially to adding that as a provision of the motion, a 2-week reporting period up through and including the full 6-month? Okay, so seeing no objection, Ms. Eldridge, that's what the motion is going to be. Anything further, Councilmember Dodwell?
No.
Councilmember Garetano.
Sure. I just want to share that I'm on the same page as Councilmember Bertolino here. I have gotten 0 complaints from residents pertaining to that trailer there. And I think I would have heard, given the number of other kind of complaints that I get on a regular basis. So I think that either folks have just gotten used to seeing the trailer, but I do agree with the sentiment. Just tidying up that property would just make it look more presentable, just because it is there. But given how close we are and the comments that Mr. Cross made, I think as long as the parties there are well aware, we're spending a lot of time here at council meetings talking about their trailer, which they may or may not. And so that's key. And if it gets to a point where, you know, we just feel like we've had enough of the trailer, then I think they either just need to come to a meeting and hear that from us, rather than us continuing to debate this over. So for now, I'm willing to support the motion that Councilmember Bertolino made.
Thank you. Councilmember Brost.
Yeah, Steve, on your comments, is there any fee the city's going to be paying for the use of that space for the events?
No.
So they're providing it at no charge.
Yeah, speaking to the microphone, sorry.
Okay,
There is
thank
no
you.
cost. There is no cost to the city for us to have our events there on that piece of property.
All right, thank you.
All right. Any other discussion? Councilmember Rambo.
Yeah, just real quickly. I think these sorts of things tend to fade into the background, so I'm not as concerned with the aesthetics as some others are, but I can definitely see their complaints. What I wanted to ask though was why wouldn't we make this a 4-month extension rather than 6 months, given what Mr. Vunich said about the hard stop for excavation November 1st?
Joe Bennett, do you have a response to Councilmember Rambo's question?
Mr. Mayor and members of City Council, I actually think it could be November 1st, 2021. If we don't have progress by then, we won't have it till March 1st of 2022.
Can we amend the motion further?
You can certainly amend the motion.
Okay, I'd like to do so then, please.
Okay, so
Lauren may want to amend my amendment.
I just want to second it.
Oh, okay.
So the motion has been to amend the main motion from 6 months to 4 months. Any discussion on the amendment?
Actually, it was to the date, November 1st.
Okay, to November 1st. My apology. Any discussion on the motion? This is on the amendment. So we're going to vote on the amendment and then we'll go back to the main motion as amended or not. All in favor of the amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so now we have the main motion on the floor, which is to proceed as recommended in Mr. Vince's July 12, 2021 letter to the council with two provisos. Number one, that there be a 2-week reporting by the developer up through and including what is now November the 1st, and that the deadline be shortened from 6 months to November the 1st. So that is now the main motion. Is there any further discussion on the main motion? Councilmember Farmer.
Yeah, just a quick question. I guess maybe Joe, this is for you. So assuming that this passes and we give them a 4-month extension, what is the time frame in which they need to get all of these items completed, the more boxwoods and the road and things like that?
From the discussions I've held with the development entity, they are ready to begin tomorrow with much of the cleanup and the work on the access point. We haven't discussed in detail the plantings. I'm actually thinking we may do some arborvitae or something like that to give a little more height and coverage. But that would probably be the last item. But the other group certainly can begin tomorrow. Thank you.
Well, I find it, I mean, I guess if these guys are moving forward, they're moving forward, but I would sure be nice to have that stuff done by the time we're doing our celebrations and things like that. By Friday. Yeah, I mean, if they're working tomorrow, I guess they can maybe get it done in 3 days. Who knows? All right.
Mr. Farmer, they're aware that we have a concert out there this coming Friday. I'd like to get as many of those things accomplished, but I think it may not be possible to do all, but certainly for the future events, August 20th and September 25th. And in between there's a group of businesses holding another drive-in movie. I believe they'll all be complete for all of those, and some for next Friday, this coming Friday, excuse me.
Is there a way, I mean, is there a way to put a provision in our very amended amendment here to say, let's get this stuff done by a certain period of time? Or is that not something we want to do?
Again, without having the ability to talk to the development entity, I just have the feeling that they're ready to go and that all of the delays are behind them. So I would respectfully ask that you give me the opportunity to get it done as quickly as possible. And if in 2 weeks, if we're still straggling, we can certainly return to this.
Councilor Brost.
Yeah, I'm just curious, Joe, are you suggesting maybe the city should look for a different location for our events?
Me?
Yeah, I mean, you don't seem to be.
I'm not concerned that if we ask them to do something, they'll not let us use their.
Say they don't do it. Are you saying we just move our event somewhere else then?
No, but I think if they decide not to do it, then that's pretty indicative to me of their plans on building something moving forward. I mean, if we're asking them, I guess it's always concerning to me when a development entity doesn't look at something and realize that their stuff is out of date and they're not actually marketing a project at all. So, I mean, I get it if they're waiting for financing.
I'm
and
just
things like
talking about
that.
our events and your concern over the appearance.
Yeah, I just think it's
Should
not a
we
great
move?
look.
Should we not accept their gracious offer of using their land?
We certainly can, but I think that there's
But
lots of
I'm asking you
places.
if we should. Should we just not accept it?
I guess we can certainly accept it, but I'm not sure that they would pull it if we ask them to do something. I mean, if they're building a development and we're functioning as good
If I own
neighbors,
the
which we should be
property, I would
doing.
start to get a little upset.
Let him listen. He's got to answer your question.
Okay.
If we're functioning here as good neighbors, which I think we all are, and I am by no means against this project at all. I hope that it is very successful. I hope that it was successful 18 months ago. But I think that if there is a concern that they would pull our ability to do a community project on their property, I would kind of like to know that, because that is sort of a little bit of a voice of what they have going on. I mean, I think that these are good men that are doing this. I don't think that there's anything wrong with them, but I also think that they have not done this particularly well. And we are incredibly driven as a city to look at new developments in a right way. I mean, I heard nothing but complaints when Brightleaf went in. I don't know that anybody did anything wrong with Brightleaf. I don't think they did, but people weren't happy about it. People aren't happy about a lot of things. So when the bulldozers start moving over there and things start going, I will be as excited as everybody else. But my concern is, if we keep kicking this can down the road, I guess I don't know how much longer until maybe we have to figure out what should go in there, because we've had this going for like 2 or 3 years. Developments aren't easy. I do these things at my regular job all the time. And so I have genuine concerns about how they are placing this thing to market, not because I want to have any ability to help them, but because these things have been stagnant for at least 18 months. And so I don't think that we should pull out our permits or pull our projects, but I do think that it's important that if they're building a new development, which will be pretty much the center of everything that goes on in the city, it should look a certain way, and it should be put together in a certain way, and it should be respected in a certain way. We gave them the benefit of the doubt, and they just keep asking for more time. That's a concern for me.
Joe Vinich, I see your hand.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor and members of City Council, I did have a conversation with one of the two partners in the development entity, Ed Cohn, and I mentioned concerns about us requiring the removal of the trailer and how it might affect his gracious offer for the use of the property. And quite frankly, he said, I would never do that. I've lived in Wildwood before there's Wildwood. I support Wildwood. I'm on the Planning and Zoning Commission, and I would never do anything to harm the city. So I would just ask that as the city council, I don't think you need to worry about that particular issue.
And I would agree with that, not even having talked with him. Okay, so do we need to repeat the motion or everyone? Okay, so the motion is now to proceed with the items to allow that are set forth in Joe Benich's July 12, 2021 letter to the council that was in your packet and posted online that has conditions for the trailer to remain. That will be in effect until November the 1st. And in that period of time, they will provide to the city updates on the project every 2 weeks. That's the motion. Seeing no further, is there any further discussion on the motion? Seeing no further discussion on the motion, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
Opposed is Councilmember Farmer and Councilmember Bartoni and Councilmember McCutcheon. Any other opposed? Any abstentions? All right, motion carries. Okay, that brings us to our executive session. And one thing I want to mention before we have a motion to go into closed session, which we need under Missouri law, relative to the discussion we had earlier as to Monarch, since we're going into executive session for a different item. If the council is agreeable to hearing from the city attorney as to the second part of your question relative to the legal aspects of the traffic study, this would be an opportunity to get 2 birds with 1 stone, so to speak. And all we need to do to accomplish that is to amend the designation for closed session that's posted in the agenda from 610.02119, subsection 19 to 610.021, subsection 19 and subsection 1. So if you are interested in having that discussion while we're at it, which might be very efficient, I would ask that whomever makes the motion for executive session indicate, I'm sorry. Okay, I've now been advised it should be 18, 19, and 1 subsections, 1, 18, and 19 of RSMO Missouri Statute 610.021. Would anyone like to make a motion to go into closed session on that basis? Made by Councilmember Bartoni, second by Councilmember Ottenberg, who sits by Councilmember Edens and Councilmember Dodd.
This is part of the hazing.
I know.
Totally normal.
All right, this will need to be a roll call vote. Is there any discussion? Is there any discussion on the motion to go into closed session? Seeing none, Ms. Eldridge, please call the roll on the motion to go into closed session.
Councilmember Jaxi,
Yes.
Councilmember Bertolino,
Yes.
Councilmember Dodwell,
Yes.
Councilmember Ottenberg,
Yes.
Councilmember Edens,
Yes.
Councilmember Brost,
Yes.
Councilmember Garitano,
Abstain.
Councilmember Flasher,
Yes.
Councilmember Rambo,
Yes.
Councilmember McCutcheon,
Yes.
Councilmember Farmer,
Yes.
Councilmember Nian,
Yes.
Councilmember Bartoni,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Okay, and for the first part of this, we will need our Captain Mundell to be part of it. All right, good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the council meeting for the city of Wildwood for Monday, June the 12th, 2021. Ms. Eldridge, oh, I'm sorry, we're in work session. So we just finished our executive session and we are still in work session and we need to adjourn the work session. Is there a motion to adjourn the work session? Made by Councilmember Jaxie, seconded by Councilmember Farmer. Non-debatable, all in favor of the motion to adjourn the work session, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, so the motion to adjourn the work session has passed. We're now going to move into the main meeting. I'd like to welcome everyone, including those joining us by Zoom, as well as those in the audience that are with us this evening. Ms. Eldridge, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Boland,
Here?
Councilmember Galani, Councilmember Hopper, Councilmember Jaxie,
Here.
Councilmember Bertolino. Here. Councilmember Dodwell,
Here.
Councilmember Ottenberg,
Here.
Councilmember Edens. Here. Councilmember Bros,
Here.
Councilmember Garitano,
Here.
Councilmember Garitano,
Here, present.
Councilmember Flasher,
Here.
Councilmember Rambo,
Here.
Councilmember McCutcheon,
Here.
Councilmember Farmer,
Here.
Councilmember Nian,
Here.
Councilmember Bartoni,
Here.
Councilmember Clark.
Here.
Okay, thank you and welcome again, everyone. For those of you who are comfortably able, if you would please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. Moving next on the agenda to the approval of minutes from the council's June 28, 2021 work session and regular meeting. Those have been provided to you. If you have any comments or questions, we can take care of those now. Otherwise, I would ask for a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes.
Motion by Councilmember Ottenberg to approve the minutes as presented, second by Councilmember Bartoni. Is there any discussion on the motion to approve the minutes? Seeing no discussion, all in favor of the motion to approve the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Moving next to public participation. Do you have any speaker cards? No speaker cards. Anyone online that has asked to speak? Okay, thank you. All right, so I won't need to read that. Moving next to mayor announcements and appointments. The appointments are going to be, as you know, they're on the consent agenda for the seating. We'll get to those momentarily. Relative to announcements, we have a presentation from our auditors, Reuben Brown, and they are with us this evening, and I'd like to call them forward. I know all of you have received a copy of the audit, and we do this every year. We also have our city treasurer, Larry McGowan, who is with us. And Larry, thank you for being here. We appreciate it. So I'm going to turn it over to you and our finance officer, Don Kaiser. Thank you so much. Yes, welcome, Don. Glad that you're here this evening as well. Thanks for all that you do. So with all of that, I'm going to turn it over to you to discuss the audit.
All right, well, thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Ted Williamson. I'm a partner with the accounting firm of Reuben Brown, and we are the auditors for the city of Wildwood. So just wanted to go over the results of the audit for the fiscal year ended December 31st, 2020. We did complete that audit this past year, and working with Dawn and her staff. The audit fieldwork took place primarily in April, and then the report was issued as required by the end of June. There are essentially two parts to the audit. There's the audit of your financial statements to make sure that they're fairly presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles set forth by the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. And then additionally, there's what's called a single audit, which is a compliance audit for federal grants that you receive, both grants that are received directly from the federal government, as well as those that are passed through the state or through another entity. And I'm pleased to report that both parts of the audit went well. For the financial statement audit, we issued what's called an unmodified or clean opinion that the financial statements are presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. We also did not identify what we call either any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in your internal controls as a result of conducting that audit. nor did we find any errors that needed to be corrected within the financial statements, either errors that have been corrected or that management elected not to correct. And that's exceptionally good news. It's not uncommon for us on any audit to at least have one or a couple of audit adjustments. We're also pleased to report that we did not have any disagreements with management. And additionally, this is one of the rare years where there were not any new accounting standards that were required to be implemented in the financial statements this year. As far as the single audit or the grant compliance audit is concerned, for that audit this year, we reviewed the coronavirus relief funds that were received through the county for approximately $2.4 million out of the $4.4 million total that of federal funds that the city expended. And again, we're pleased to report we did not have any findings that all of the expenditures we tested were expended in compliance with the laws and regulations associated with the coronavirus relief program. So that's the summary of the audit results. Again, I think you'd agree with me that is very good results. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Before we get to that, City Administrator Cross, do you want to say anything?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank Ted and his staff. Brandy Lawyer was also, she actually did most of the field work, working with Dawn. And again, another very good year. They do a great job auditing. They don't waste a lot of time. They don't take a lot of time on staff. And they do an exceptional job. And we are quite pleased with working with Reuben Brown. Also, I want to point out, and as you know, I mean, I served as the treasurer for 17 years, and every year, and including this year, I get to, again, make sure that the council heard the words that there were no adjustments whatsoever to the audit. There were not a single adjustment, and that goes to Dawn and her staff in terms of putting together the financial statements every single day. And I've said that now for 17 years in a row, and I'm sure Mr. McGowan will be following in my footsteps and saying the same thing year after year, because Dawn does a fantastic job. I don't know how this city would function without Dawn as our finance officer, quite honestly, and I think Ted would attest to that. So again, great job for Dawn, great job, Ted, on the audit, and we appreciate it. And we'll look forward to working with you all again next year.
Likewise.
Thank you.
City Treasurer Larry McGowan, do you have anything you would like to add?
I think only that sort of to reiterate what Steve said as far as Dawn's involvement in the process.
We're going to get you on the microphone here.
Dawn is absolutely kind of the kingpin, if you will, in terms of pulling everything together and making it possible for an outside audit firm to come in where they may not be familiar, where all the records are kept and that sort of thing. So they put really a tremendous burden on our staff, primarily on Dawn, to pull those type of things together efficiently, accurately, and to speed up their process, which I imagine in turn helps us minimize the fee a little bit. So anyway, I'd just like to thank Dawn as always.
Thank you. Does any member of the council have any questions for the auditor? If not, I've got a couple. Okay, I have two questions. First question, like on page 31 in note 2, you speak to a policy that we have, which you find favorable. This is in concentration of credit risk that does not allow for more than 50% of the city's total investment portfolio to be invested in a single class of securities, with the exception of T-bills and so forth. My question is, have you noted anything in the process of your audit this year or in other years as a matter of policy that we may be doing and doing well, but we don't have a written policy for, and you think we ought to have a written policy for? So have you noted anything that you think might warrant consideration for a policy in terms of our financial dealings and processes in particular that we don't currently have?
I can't think of anything off the top of my head that would meet that description. Our experience has been that your policies are very sound and in compliance both with law and with best practices. But I can't think of anything specifically that is a practice that's not an official policy that I would recommend being.
Okay. City Administrator Cross.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We do in fact have an investment policy. And Dawn and I, gosh, we put that together a long time ago and we review it every couple of years. And it actually tells us exactly how we invest the city's excess funds.
And I wasn't, that's great. I wasn't talking about
Investments.
investment specifically, just anything that they've noted in the audit that we don't have a policy for, that we might want to have one similar to that.
Right.
So that's kind of where I was at. And then my second of my two questions, I know in the corporate world, at some point after a series of years of you in particular, looking over the finances with the same people at the city, that changes are made at the firm so that according to various rules that are out there, it's not the same set of eyes working with the same people year after year. So I guess it's a two-part question. I'm assuming the same rules apply in the municipal area. Is that correct or not?
It's not a requirement, but it is a best practice and certainly one that can be implemented at the request of the client.
What have we done up to this point? relative to
So this is, I believe, around my fourth or fifth year as the audit partner on the audit. There's a different partner at our firm who was the partner prior to that. And so what we would do before too much longer is we would then rotate to a new audit partner at our firm. Again, it gives you the best of both worlds in that you get a new partner with a fresh perspective, but then you don't lose the institutional knowledge of the firm, having all the records and understanding how.
So you move within the same company, but you just move to different people.
Yeah, and fortunately, our firm is large enough. We have a deep enough bench that we can do
Right.
that.
So if the city was, I guess now it's going to be a three-part question. So if the city was going to do something like that relative to my first question about a policy, would it not be a good idea to put that in a formal policy?
Yeah, I would consider that as a formal policy. I would not, obviously, I'm got, conflict of interest here, but I would not make it a policy to require firm rotation because you don't want to handicap yourself in that way in the bidding process. But having it as a policy that the firm you select to rotate the lead partner periodically, I think would be a good policy.
Would there be any objection on the part of the council to asking our city treasurer to work with our city administrator and Dawn and develop a recommendation one way or the other? I'm not married to anything at this point. We'd just like to at least explore it as to whether we should have a rotation policy, and if so, whether that should be in writing and what the term of that rotation with our auditors be. Would there be any objection to them doing that? Councilmember Dodd.
I would be okay with that. I think it would be best for us to document how the process works, because in the past councils that I've been on, we have had certain council members say that we couldn't use a certain firm because they've been so repetitive in their processes. So I think it would help us if we have a firm that we are comfortable with to better document their rotation process so that they can continue to provide us quality service and historical perspective, but we can ensure our residents that we are getting new eyes on the scene on a regular basis.
The other thing too, to keep in mind, and I don't disagree with that. The other thing is, and I say this with all due respect to you and your firm, firms change. They get bought, they disintegrate, people leave and so forth. So at this point, I would just, unless there's objection, I would just say we let our treasurer and the city administrator, if there's no objection, kind of think about these things both on an intra-firm and inter-firm basis and develop a recommendation or not. Maybe they don't feel that there is one needed, but if there is, come back maybe within 30 days and advise the council as to their thoughts on it. And then the council can decide what it wants to do if there is a recommendation made. Is that agreeable with everyone? Everyone? All right. So Larry McGowan, thank you for, you have any comments on that?
I would agree totally. Just from the standpoint of.
Let's get you to the microphone here since we have to record these for our public. Go ahead.
One of the absolute imperative things that has to occur during an audit is that the audit firm must remain independent. So this is what we're talking about, is it leads to the independence issue both in perception as well as,
Yeah.
as in practice. And so I think it is a good idea, Jim, to consider something like this.
Okay,
For
excellent.
sure.
Excellent. Thank you. So with no objection, I'm not seeing any objection. Is 30 days agreeable to you, Larry, and Steve Cross? Workable? Okay, so that's what we'll do. And if you could reflect that in the minutes, please. And anything further from you relative to the audit?
I don't have anything.
Okay, any other questions? Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thanks
for-
all.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, we have no public hearings, so moving into our legislation, second readings, Bill 2624 is before the council for final passage. It concerns wards 7 and 8. Is there a motion for the second reading of the bill? Made by Councilmember Flasher, 7 and 8, seconded by Councilmember Garitano. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Ms. Eldridge, please read Bill 2624.
Bill 2624, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to negotiate and execute an STP urban program agreement by and between the city of Wildwood and the Missouri Highways and Transportation Commission in order to proceed with obtaining federal funding to design and construct the Manchester Road and Taylor Road resurfacing project, second reading.
Thank you. Rick, anything further from you relative to Bill 2624 in addition to what the council has been provided and we discussed at the last meeting?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, I have nothing additional to add, but I'm available for any questions from the city council.
Any questions for Rick or any comments on the bill? Seeing none, Ms. Eldridge, please call the roll for final passage of Bill 2624.
Councilmember Ottenberg,
Yes.
Councilmember Edens.
Yes.
Councilmember Bros,
Yes.
Councilmember Garitano,
Yes.
Councilmember Flasher,
Yes.
Councilmember Rambo,
Yes.
Councilmember McCutcheon,
Yes.
Councilmember Farmer,
Yes.
Councilmember Nian,
Yes.
Councilmember Bartoni,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Jaxi,
Yes.
Councilmember Bertolino,
Yes.
Councilmember Dodwell.
Yes.
Okay, Bill 2624 has passed and will be implemented. Moving next to Bill 2625, it's before the council for final passage and it concerns Ward 6. Is there a motion for the first reading of the bill made by Councilmember Jaxi, seconded by Councilmember Rambo? All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Ms. Eldridge, please read Bill 2625.
Bill 2625, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to execute a contract on behalf of the city with TerraSpec for the development of design and engineered drawings and specifications for bidding purposes in association with the Bluffview Park upgrades, which would include construction administration / management services, second reading.
Thank you. Joe, anything, I'm sorry, Rick, Joe. I thought this was Joe. Anything, you went offline there for a second. Anything further you'd like to mention for the benefit of the council and the public relative to Bill 2625?
No, Mr. Mayor, but I'm available for any questions or comments the city council may have in this regard. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Joe or any comments from any member of the council? Seeing none, Ms. Eldridge, please call the roll for final passage of Bill 2625.
Councilmember Edens,
Yes.
Councilmember Bros,
Yes.
Councilmember Garitano,
Yes.
Councilmember Flasher,
Yes.
Councilmember Rambo,
Yes.
Councilmember McCutcheon,
Yes.
Councilmember Farmer, Councilmember Nian,
Yes.
Councilmember Bartoni,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Jaxi,
Yes.
Councilmember Bertolino,
Yes.
Councilmember Dodwell,
Yes.
Councilmember Ottenberg.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Bill 2625 has passed. Moving into first readings, Bill 2620, you have an amended version of that, revised version of that rather, 2620A that has been provided to you, FYI. It's at your different places on the bench. So Bill 2620A is before the council, as I said, for first reading, and it concerns Ward 8. Is there a motion for the first reading of the bill? Made by Councilmember Garitano. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Ottenberg. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Ms. Eldridge, please read Bill 2620A for the first time.
Bill 2620A, an ordinance by the City Council of the City of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing certain modifications to existing C8 Planned Commercial District Ordinance Number 2549, which governs a mixed-use development located in the city's town center downtown and neighborhood general districts by allowing up to an additional 6 months for the submittal and action on the required site development plan, with such being consistent with the favorable action of the Planning and Zoning Commission that is set forth in its May 3rd, 2021 letter of recommendation on the same. First reading.
Thank you. Joe Benich, anything you would like to mention relative to Bill 2620A?
No, sir, Mr. Mayor, the direction of City Council was to amend the bill. It has been amended accordingly, and the department's available for any questions or comments.
All right. And can you refresh the recollection of everyone and for the public that may not have been at the last meeting, the nature of that requested amendment?
Yes, sir. The Planning and Zoning Commission was asked by the development entity to extend the period of time to submit the site development plan for review and action by that body. The Planning and Zoning Commission gave up to 24 months to complete that process. The City Council reduced that 24-month period to 6 months. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Joe or any comments? All right, seeing none, this will be, I'm sorry, Councilmember Garitano, my apology, go ahead.
Yeah, I do have a question and maybe I just didn't interpret it correctly, but in the conversation earlier, wasn't there an amendment that Mr. Rambo made for November 1st being the date?
Mr. Garitano, I believe that was the case, but again, that was in the context of the sales trailer discussion. Certainly, if the City Council chose to amend the bill again, it could be amended from 6 months to 4 months.
Thank you for
And that
clarifying.
bill can only be amended at a second reading, not at a first reading tonight.
So my question then is based on that discussion, and I believe that amendment that Mr. Rambo made had passed. Is that the intention to change that date or leave it as is? And I guess no action needed at this time, but if it is, then we do have to do that at the next one.
Joe Vintage, would you mind between now and the next council meeting, providing the council with your recommendation relative to whether Bill 2620A needs to be in synchronicity with the action of the council relative to the November 1 deadline that was passed as to the sales trailer in work session? If you don't know the answer to that now, you do go ahead, but otherwise, if you want to think on that and let the council know between now and the next meeting, we can do it that way.
Mr. Mayor, I'd be glad to discuss it with Mr. Young, our city attorney, Mr. Cross, our administrator, and have a response for the City Council at the next meeting. Thank you.
Okay, that's what we'll do. All right, thank you. Moving next to Bill 2626, it's before the council for first reading and it concerns Ward 6. Is there a motion for the first reading of the bill? Made by Councilmember Rambo, seconded by Councilmember Jaxi. All in favor of the motion for first reading, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Ms. Eldridge, please read Bill 2626.
Bill 2626, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing a change in zoning from the PS Park and Scenic District to the NU Non-Urban Residence District upon a parcel of ground that is 0.53 acre in size, which is located on the north side of Stones Throw Drive at its current terminus. First reading.
Okay, thank you. Joe, do you have anything further? I'm sorry. Yes, Joe, do you have anything further relative to Bill 2626 that you would like to mention?
Mr. Mayor and members of City Council, a public hearing was held on this matter before City Council. At the conclusion of that public hearing, the City Council authorized the preparation of the bill. I believe that Mr. Erb was intending to be at City Council tonight to request a second reading, but there was no public participation. So from that perspective, the department's available for any questions regarding the bill as written. Thank you.
So would you have an objection to a second reading for the residents' benefit on this bill this evening?
Not at all, sir. This is as we call it, just a simple rezoning. And it would address an error of the previous property owners and have a zoning district designation consistent with the use of property. So no objection. And thank you for
And it has-
asking, sir.
You're welcome, and it has no financial implication as well. Would there be anyone interested in making a motion for a second reading this evening, made by Councilmember Jaxi, seconded by Councilmember Rambo? This will take a 2/3 supermajority, as you know, for a second reading at the same meeting. Same discussion on the motion for a second reading. Seeing none, all in favor, we'll do it by voice vote. Please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? So we have the 2/3. Ms. Eldridge, please read Bill 2626.
Bill 2626, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing a change in zoning from the PS Park and Scenic District to the NU Non-Urban Residence District upon a parcel of ground that is 0.53 acre in size, which is located on the north side of Stone's Throw Drive at its current terminus, second reading.
Thank you. Any further discussion by any member of the council? Seeing none, Ms. Eldridge, please call the roll for final passage of Bill 2626.
Councilmember Edens,
Yes.
Councilmember Bros,
Yes.
Councilmember Garitano,
Yes.
Councilmember Flasher,
Yes.
Councilmember Rambo,
Yes.
Councilmember McCutcheon,
Yes.
Councilmember Farmer,
Yes.
Councilmember Nian,
Yes.
Councilmember Bartoni,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Jaxi,
Yes.
Councilmember Bertolino,
Yes.
Councilmember Dodwell,
Yes.
Councilmember Ottenberg.
Bill 2626 has passed and is now in effect. Joe, I'm sure you will, but just to make sure, if you could please let the landowner, the resident know what the council did this evening. I'm sure he'll be appreciative of that.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I will be glad to do that. And I know he will be appreciative, as is the department, because I think this gets his project moving forward 2 weeks earlier than anticipated. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Okay, moving next to Bill 2627. It's before the council for first reading and concerns all wards except 1 and 6, those being 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, and 8. Is there a motion for the first reading of the bill? Made by Councilmember Dodwell, seconded by Councilmember Edens. All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Ms. Eldridge, please read Bill 2627.
Bill 2627, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to execute all the necessary contracts and undertake the needed actions to engage the United States Geological Survey, USGS, in the first year of a 2-year study of the Calks Creek watershed as part of the overall efforts of the city's Watershed Erosion Task Force, WETF, to develop environmentally appropriate and engineered solutions to ongoing concerns therein, with such analysis to begin before the end of 2021 first reading.
Thank you. Joe, anything further you'd like to mention relative to Bill 2627?
No, sir, Mr. Mayor, the Department of Planning as well as the Department of Public Works are available for any questions or comments. And the department wants to thank the mayor and city council for supporting this study. It is a substantial amount of money, but I think it will help in the Calks Creek watershed and save resources in the future, as well as provide a template for the city's other 8 watersheds. So thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Joe? Any comments? All right. The bill will be on the council's agenda for its next meeting. And finally, moving to Bill 2628, it's before the council and it concerns several wards, 1, 4, 5, 7, and 8. Is there a motion for the first reading of the bill? Made by Councilmember McCutcheon, seconded by Councilmember Brost. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Ms. Eldridge, please read Bill 2628 for the first time.
Bill 2628, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, that endorses the action of the Planning and Zoning Commission in its adoption of the 2021 Town Center Plan Update after extensive study, and therefore ratifies changes to the charter's comprehensive zoning plan, which reflects the regulating plan component of this aforementioned document, first reading.
Thank you. Joe, anything you would like to mention relative to Bill 2628?
Again, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And briefly, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council, a public hearing was held on this matter approximately 2 weeks ago. At the conclusion of the hearing, City Council authorized the preparation of legislation. And if there are any questions, I'm sure the members of City Council that acted as liaisons to the Town Center Update Team or are on the Planning and Zoning Commission would be glad to answer them, as well as the Department of Planning. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Joe or any comments relative to Bill 2628? Councilor McCutcheon.
Yeah, Joe, I have a quick question. I don't know if I'm guessing it's to you. So when I was looking over the bill, I saw the recommendation by the Planning and Zoning Commission to change one of the designations of a property close to the Village Green to Neighborhood General. Was that adopted on the part of Planning and Zoning? Is that included in this bill, or does it remain as T-Cut proposed?
It has been adopted by the Planning and Zoning Commission, and the new regulating plan reflects its change from downtown district designation to neighborhood general district designation. But Ms. McCutcheon, there is a key point to that change. The Planning and Zoning Commission required the frontage of that parcel of ground that abuts the Village Green to include a commercial use, at least on any first floor residential activities or as a standalone building. So the intent is to allow residential on a portion of it, but to offer services to the Village Green that might be applicable and wanted. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Joe or anyone else, or any comments? Councilmember Clark.
I just have one comment about reading through this. I noticed that there wasn't any specifically addressed issues with disabilities. And I know I've said this many times before, but if we don't address disabilities with a focus on that throughout all of these projects, whether it's facilities or services or infrastructure, we will miss something. And overall, many cities in the United States and even around the world are, with the new urbanism, they are focusing on disabilities as well as their planning. And I just want to encourage us all to remember that we have to be creative and go beyond the very vague instructions that we get from the ADA, because that won't give us specifics about all the disabilities. And so many times I've heard the comment, if we address one, we'll have to address all of them. But in my mind, we need to address all of them because, you know, we can focus on the curbs and the wheelchairs and the sidewalks and even sign language interpreters and many things, but we're missing a lot of disabilities. And the WHO has, it's been a few years since I saw the statistics, but they said 15% of people around the globe have disabilities. So we have a lot of people in Wildwood with disabilities we don't even know. And many times they won't come forward and say, I need something. We have to be creative and think about that consistently throughout all of our planning.
And so are you, just for information, are you suggesting relative to the city doing that it look at things that would be beyond what's legally required? You know, in other words, something that, or a series of things that might be of assistance, but yet is not the minimum legal requirement? Or are you just suggesting that we continue to comply with, which I assume we do, you know, the legal aspects of things when we do them?
I am suggesting we're creative and we look at what might be coming in the future, because there's more and more we're focusing on that, and we should be leading instead of following in what we're doing with disabilities. So if we're looking forward at what might come about, if we're thinking about it as we're planning, instead of thinking about it at the end of our planning and saying, oh, well, we comply with ADA, we haven't looked at all of the areas. And I'm sure we've missed things because, there's probably curbs that people can't get over with a wheelchair that we just didn't think about, because there's so much more than just waiting till the end or letting someone else tell us, well, we've met ADA compliance. So I think that just in the planning system, if we, as we're going, we consider that, have we looked at everything we needed for disabilities? We'll start thinking about it more, but I don't hear that in our group, and myself included, until at the end, or we've missed something, or someone needs something specific.
So one thing that we might consider, and if the council wants to look at this, we could have our two department directors, Public Works, Rick and Joe of Planning, have that discussion with our city administrator, maybe in the next few weeks or 30 days, and you and anyone else that they might want to involve in that. But it might be just to start, if there's no objection to it, and the council can ultimately decide this, but to get us down that path would be to have something as simple as an item of explanation when bills come before the council, or the background information that speaks to how it addresses the disabilities and so forth. Is that kind of what you're thinking?
That would be great.
Would there be any objection to having our two department directors and our city administrator consider that and report back to the council by the time of the next meeting? Is that agreeable? Any objection to that? Councilmember Dodwell?
Mr. Mayor, I would just like to ask that they, during that process, detail out specific examples of what Teresa is looking for, so that those of us who aren't as familiar with some of the disabled requirements understand better what needs to be included. And I'm trying to have I'm having a hard time trying to figure out how, as a city, we're going to guess what the newest technologies might be that would aid someone in the way we design our city and where you're getting to. So I'm looking very forward to some more detailed discussion after we get
And so I would suggest
that information.
Thank you for the comment. I would suggest that, as I'm assuming they would, since you brought it up, they'll probably reach out to you. If any other member of the council has experience or interest in these issues, and you want to present ideas to the city administrator, sort of as a clearinghouse on this, and then we'll get a report back, and maybe it's just something to start as simple as indicating with in the documents you get how we're addressing not only the legal requirements, but whatever. So is that agreeable with everyone? All right, we'll do that. Thank you for bringing that up. So Bill 2628, we have read the first time, correct? Okay, so that'll be on the agenda for the next council meeting. We have no resolutions. Moving to the consent agenda, we have two appointments. The first is Kurt Hensick, who is from Ward 1. He served many years on the Architectural Review Board and would be there still, except for term limits. And so when that happens, I try to work with individuals that want to continue to serve the city in a different capacity. And he has indicated that he would like to be on the Historic Preservation Commission. And I think his background in architecture would serve that commission well. We also have Stacy Jackson, who is our provisional municipal judge. Her term has ended and it's a reappointment of her. And so since these are on the consent agenda, if you want to take them separately, you can. But if you're good with them, then one vote will approve both of them. Would anyone like to make a motion? Councilmember Jackson to approve both. Okay, is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Edens. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing no discussion on the motion of the approval of the two appointments as presented, please, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Any abstentions? All right, thank you. Motion carries. Anything under miscellaneous? Councilmember Edens.
I probably could have brought this up in work session, but I just wanted to kind of ping pong around a thought and see if it is something that is just really a request for more information, or if it has the potential to be developed and kind of show up on a different agenda, whether or not, I would assume that would be a committee agenda. But I had this conversation with Councilmember Bartoni as well, and it's in light of what has been in the news about decisions made by governing boards such as, HOAs or condo associations, and the regulations vary from state to state and also county to county and even local governments. My first question is about what is already in place, but second, if we need to explore adding regulation. So specific to the idea of how we are required to have a specific amount in our reserves, right? And so it's the 25% of our operating budget stays in reserves. Do we need to be looking at some sort of requirements for institutions like those boards to have a healthy reserve for emergency or necessary repairs, especially when public safety, is that something the city or the county can do
You're talking about
as an
HOAs,
ordinance?
like HOAs.
Or like with the condo board, for example,
Right.
was in the news. And so there's been some reports about other states with local governments putting that in place to try to make sure. And I can tell you as well from different HOAs I'm familiar with, I've certainly heard conversations with, well, if we have any money in savings, we should just, immediately reduce our HOA fees. And then I've, also heard, well, if this MSD retention basin were to collapse, and here's how much it would cost. And then that person usually goes, oh my gosh, we should save our money. But these are conversations that all of our residents are having with themselves already. And I'm just wondering if we need to create bumper lanes to help encourage good decisions and good public safety in the future. Can we explore that?
We can. I would respectfully suggest, given that well, first of all, it's not on the agenda for tonight, so.
Right, I'm just saying, like,
Yeah,
for information.
What I would suggest, if there's no objection, is that we ask Planning and Parks, which Councilmember Bartoni chairs, and so you've already talked to him about this.
Yep.
To do what committees do, and to kind of look at your idea. Obviously, there are going to be legal implications on that, and so working with the city attorney and debate it and make a decision and report to the council.
Perfect. And I have one other thing specifically that.
Was there any, let me make sure, is there any
Oh,
objection?
sorry.
That's all right. Is there any objection from any member of the council for that? Okay,
Okay.
go ahead.
And so in specific context as well, we have different subdivisions that, for example, own section of the creeks. We also have public areas of the creek, and we have some areas that are owned by individual homeowners. So if there was a catastrophic failure, for example, due to erosion that affected great loss of the personal property owner, but it was the HOA that should have been responsible for maintaining that, I want to go ahead and start encouraging them now to put back money.
And I think that, well, two things. One, I would suggest, if there's no objection, that be part and parcel of the assignment to Planning and Parks, number one. Number two, I believe we do have the ability, and Joe Bennett, correct me if I'm wrong, to, when new developments come in, to require escrows and that sort of thing. And so that can be part of it. And maybe it's a matter of the different standards that we use and the rules that are already in place for those. Joe, we do have the ability to do that. Is that correct? Joe Bennett?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we have an escrow process that addresses required improvements in subdivision, and then we have a long-term maintenance requirement as well. But given what we're finding out with the Watershed Erosion Task Force, as Ms. Edens has alluded to, sometimes we could probably do more to put these homeowners associations on better footing for the future.
So if there's no objection, I would suggest we make that a subset of the assignment to Planning and Parks. Does that agree with you?
Mhm. I mean, and nobody likes to be the person that adds more red tape, but that's exactly what I'm
Well-
saying. Sometimes you have to do that. And I know that I have some HOAs that I worry about, and that we need to look into that.
Okay, fair enough. Any objection to that subsection of subpart assignment? Okay. Anything else under miscellaneous? Councilmember Farmer.
Yeah, I don't know what the appetite will be for this, but I was thinking about it after the 4th of July. My neighborhood was very excited about fireworks on the 4th of July. And I, of course, like fireworks. My kids like fireworks, but I do know that we've got a lot of residents and animals and things that do not. So I have looked a little bit and seen some examples of basically like coordinated drone shows as opposed to fireworks. I know it's not something that we do very much here in the city, but if we get the Village Green in place and we have some other events of that nature, that might be something down the road. So I thought it might be as good a time as any to just see, you know, what, if any, are the cost differences or safety concerns or any of those other things, so that, you know, I got more fireworks questions than I thought I was going to get from some residents that weren't real thrilled about it.
So I would suggest that's something, if you want to have it looked at, that Board of Public Safety might want to take a start at. We obviously have a drone ordinance that may need to be part of that. Is that what you'd be good with that?
Yeah, I just thought it'd be an interesting, different look than things exploding
Any
everywhere.
objection to having Board of Public Safety look at the issue raised by Councilmember Farr? Seeing none, that's what we'll do. Anything else under miscellaneous? Councilmember Dodwell.
When are Joe and Rick coming back to the meeting in person?
Joe and Rick, when are you coming back to the meetings in person?
I would love to be at the next one if there's no objection.
Rick?
I think my answer has to be the same, Mr. Mayor.
I think it does.
Sorry, Rick.
No problem.
Yeah, so I think we'll probably see them at the next meeting in person. It's good to be wanted, isn't it, guys? All right. Anything further under miscellaneous? Councilmember Rambo.
Yeah, I hope this is an appropriate question, but I would like Mr. Cross or Mr. Vunich to hopefully update us with some good news on the staffing front for planning and parks. Is that reasonable to ask? Do you have any news to share, or is there been any progress on the staffing? We're 2 people short.
Well, actually, we did fill the one position, the planner position. We filled that, let's see, I think she's starting her 3rd week.
So she started.
Yes,
Okay.
Robin Keefe is the planner,
Okay.
and she's doing a great job. She's really jumped in with both feet. So Mr. Vunish and I are now working on the assistant director. Joe has reviewed, he took the initial review of the resumes and then has passed them to me. We have something like 35 resumes. And
Oh,
it's in a
great.
big
So you've
folder.
got a good response and
Oh,
good
we got a very,
candidates.
very good response. And so those resumes are sitting on my desk to review, and my hope is to get through them in the next couple of days.
Awesome.
That's my plan. And so.
So the
then we
short,
can start.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
So anyway, so we filled one, and hopefully that the second one will, we'll start interviewing, hopefully maybe next week if I can get through those resumes. It's a lot
Great
of
news.
resumes.
Okay, thanks.
Anything else under miscellaneous? Seeing nothing further under miscellaneous, thank you for all the questions and ideas and comments. I would ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting of the council. Made by Councilmember Bertolino, seconded by Councilmember McCutcheon, non-debatable. All in favor of the motion to adjourn, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? We are adjourned. Thank you and enjoy the rest of your week.